Hey everyone, Nubkeks here. In today's video, it's going to be a little bit of a different video. We're diving into a tier list, but not about which tank is the strongest in the game. No. This is about which tanks are the best designed in Heroes of the Storm, right? We're coming to the end of 2019 and dad jokes are here. 2020 vision, right? Looking back now at HOTS. Well, which were the best designed? Which were the most fun? Brought the most variety? Were great to play with and great to play against? And which tanks were not any of that and kind of sucked, to be blunt about it. So let's dive into it. We're going to go through it in alphabetical order. And if you guys do like the video, well, heck, we might check out the other roles in the game as well. So first tank to look at here is Anub'arak. For me, I'm going to put Anub'arak in the B tier. He's pretty much an average tank, I think. The good things about Anub'arak, he brought an interesting sense of survivability, having a very low amount of health for a tank, which I think is cool, kind of thriving off of the survivability his abilities gave him, right? Having his shield from his W and how they changed that later on to give it spell armor and relying on that spell armor to keep you alive, or just relying on the amount of AoE crowd control he could put out to keep him alive. I thought that was really cool. I thought Cocoon was also a very iconic ultimate ability that had a huge impact on the team and really changed how both teams would play around the team fights, which I thought was nice. Some of the downsides, though, for Anub'arak, why is he only in B tier for me? Well, touching on Cocoon again, I thought Cocoon has had some problems in terms of balance over the course of Anub'arak's life. You know, being too powerful or needing niche picks like a Leeming, Disintegrate Laser Beam, or like a Tracer, something like that with very high attack speed to actually break through the Cocoon, and certain heroes really struggling to be able to do anything at all against it. So I think that's been a little bit of a problem. And for me as well, one of the big missed opportunities with Anub'arak, which really takes him down a couple of pegs here, kind of appropriately because I just did a video on it a couple of days ago, was the Beetle build for Anub'arak. The whole idea of spawning locusts, having your locust swarm, that whole aspect of the character, I feel it's been really underused and underdeveloped for just kind of the entirety of his lifespan. It's just never been that good compared to just building a crowd control based Anub'arak. You know, pressing the locust swarm heroic, it's okay, but it never feels really that powerful, never as much as Cocoon did. So that brings him down a little bit for me. He's still a good solid tank with interesting crowd control abilities, but kind of lacking in the other departments. Next up we have Arthas. I feel Arthas is relatively difficult to place. For me, as a main tank, I'm going to put him in as a C, actually, for Arthas, which is probably a little bit harsh. I'm curious what you think about it, but let me give you my reasonings about it. I feel like Arthas does have he feels good to play at certain moments. You know, when you're against a melee-heavy team and your slowing aura is a real threat to them, that feels good. Or when you pop your Army of the Dead and you walk in with all of your ghouls with you attacking and being able to sacrifice them to heal yourself, I think that feels really good as well. However, I think what feels bad about Arthas is, as a main tank, it feels really weak on the engagement. His ability to actually start off fights, and it's just total lack of mobility. It feels very bad. You feel okay defensively, but very weak offensively. And Summon Sindragosa as an ultimate, compared to Army of the Dead, it does not feel very good. Summon Sindragosa has been very underwhelming, and Arthas, when he takes it, really lacks the survivability to actually be a very impactful tank. So I think that's been one of the big points where he's struggled. Now, he does have something of a niche role in an off lane, and I think that's cool. I think that's good for him, but in terms of being a main tank, I do feel like he doesn't feel that good. Also, the fact that he has Frostmourne, one of, if not the most iconic weapon in the entire game, and it never really feels all that impactful. Or likewise, coming from Warcraft 3, where you've got the Death Coil ability for the Death Knight, which feels powerful. It feels really impactful. It's something you play around. The Death Coil that Arthas has in the game really doesn't feel like anything of that. It's really mostly all about that slowing aura and just being this sort of big zoning tank. And I think that's nice, but it really doesn't make him stand out to me. And for that reason, I'm putting him as a C rank. Next up, we've got Blaze. And I actually quite like Blaze. I think there's some good things going for him. I'm going to put him, however, in the B tier. I think you kind of have to put him here, unfortunately, because Blaze has struggled historically to be a main tank. They've made a lot of changes to him recently, trying to bring him back up into that main tank position, tweaking his talents, his basic abilities, and I think those have been good changes, which have really helped. And also the music has died. Where is the music gone? We've disconnected from Okay, well, we'll be back eventually. We're not stopping the video. We're powering on. The internet's dead, but we're still going. Okay, cool. Right. Where was I? Blaze. Yeah, sorry. Okay, cool. So he's got some good things going for him, I think. I think the oil spill mechanic and lighting that on fire, being able to use that as a heal, or just using the oil spill itself as a slow, I think that's really cool. And it gives something that the enemy team can play around as well. I think that's really unique and really fun. And he also brings decent wave clear with that as well, which I think is a nice little thing to bring as a tank, but it's not too overpowered. I think where Blaze falls down, though, has been with the bunker heroic. Such a cool heroic at pro level play and seeing the things people could do with it, but it ended up being really, really overpowered for a long time at pro level play, while at the same time being almost next to useless in just the general play, the general level of play that most players are playing at. It's just not a very good heroic at all. And for me, that's a big downside to Blaze as a character. When so much of his power had to be balanced around that bunker, and it was so niche in its use that it just made him just not really feel good as a main tank for most of his lifespan in the game. So that definitely has to bring him down a couple of tiers. I do think that right now, Blaze is actually in a pretty good spot as a main tank. He's pretty cool with his charge engage, which does a stun, and then being able to protect himself with oil spills, and having that sort of ranged ability as a tank to lay down these range slowing patches, I think is really unique and really interesting. But he's really held back by that historical lack, and even the current lack in the bunker. It's the Medivh syndrome, I think is a good way of putting it. Great if you've got a team that's, very skilled and is used to playing with it, but if they're not, which is most people, because you're not going to have a Blaze every single game, it doesn't do too hot. So that's where Blaze is. Another controversial one here, I think, and that's Cho'gall. I think it's important when we look at Cho'gall to separate the Cho and the Gall. And if we do a ranged assassin tier list, you're going to see me be really harsh on Gall. However, I think that Cho is actually okay. I'm going to put Cho in as a B. I think that Cho has some really good points going for him. Number one, the idea of being like the tank who's carrying around another player like as a turret is just a really cool fantasy. It's a really badass thing. That just, you hear that idea as a MOBA player. Like, remember when Cho'gall first came out? You'd be like, wow, that's really freaking cool. And I'm sure a lot of people who had stopped playing the game or, played on and off kind of rush back to check out this character because it's such a neat idea. And I think it is. I also think that Cho has got a nice little set of basic abilities. They're pretty solid, right? You've got your charge up fist that lets you dash forwards and knocks people aside. That's pretty fun with the charge up effect. You've got the AoE fire attack, which heals you a bit and applies a dot. And I think it's got a fun tank little gameplay thing where you can punch the different people to reapply the dot and reapply the heal to yourself. I think that's pretty cool. It's a fun little tank mechanic. And then aiming the bomb and having Gall explode it. I think that's okay. It's a pretty decent and pretty simple way to introduce a bit of gameplay between the two. Now, one of the big things that I do like about Cho'gall, or I do like, about Cho specifically, which has not been true really of these other three, that I think does set him apart, is that he has got two really good heroic abilities. You got the Hammer of Twilight, makes your basic attacks better, I think, but also gives you a short cooldown AoE attack that does knockback, it does a stun, and that changes the way you play the character, right? Suddenly you charge up your fists and dash behind them, can set up a knockback to the side, set up your team. I think that's awesome. It feels very impactful. Then on the other hand, you've got Upheaval, which pulls everything in. It's just such a phenomenal feeling tank ability to start the fight, pull people out of position. I think it's excellent. So I think that's a really good thing about Cho, is that you have these two very different heroics, very different style. One being more of I'm going to flank and knock out a position, or I'm going to peel from my team. The other being, no, I want to pull them in and set up my team. I want to displace the enemy team and engage that way. I think they're two very different play styles, but they both feel really good as a main tank. And they both have different ways to play against them for the enemy team too, which I think is important. Now, where Cho falls down, and the reason I've been kind of raving about Cho here, right? You say, wow, Nubkeks, you're saying such good things. Why is Cho only in B tier? I think the big problem with Cho, unfortunately, again, I'm going to talk about this with the range assassin thing. I think the big problem with Cho is the Gall. I don't think that Gall is very good, unfortunately. And I think the trait for Cho is one of the places where that comes into effect. So Cho's trait, he can activate it to gain armor, and that gives him some tankiness. Well, one of the big problems that has been around for a long time with Cho'gall, and it's kind of changed here and there, but for a long time, he was basically just a bomb delivery machine for the Gall. That's all he was there for, really, just to throw the bomb. He couldn't really tank, and Gall just had his trait turned on, which gives him bonus spell damage. It's just very difficult for Cho to use that armor. I think Garrosh is a good comparison, where Garrosh's trait, which gives him more armor the lower his health goes, it lets Garrosh feel really tanky, and it makes him feel big and strong and a powerful front line. Cho's trait, on the other hand, really doesn't manage to do that, and it's one of those buttons that's like, you really don't want to press it if you can avoid it. You want to let Gall have that bonus damage because he kind of needs it to have an impact. So I think while the idea was interesting, I suppose, of having the two players flip their traits, I feel like it was kind of a shoehorned in, right, of going, well, we need some way to make them play together a bit more interaction. So this trait, having choose one or the other, is a good idea. I think in practice it turned out to be a bad idea, and it makes Cho feel bad because of it. And yeah, Cho just, it doesn't feel like a big, bulky frontliner. He doesn't feel like a tank. And I think, again, a lot of the problems comes from Gall and the way that Gall's damage works. Yeah, that just drags him down for me. They've also been plagued by balance problems. Again, I think because of that, where Cho'gall, they're just not that effective of a hero. They tend to be extremely reliant on a healer like Anna. Honestly, I think that really you need Anna these days for Cho'gall to even be a viable pick, which is very niche. And I think that really drags them down. But I think that the idea of Cho as a tank was a really good one. I think the idea of the turret that you're carrying around is really cool too. I just think the way that the turret was implemented was not good, and it really has pulled Cho down from being quite a fun character, quite a cool and unique character, to being, his uniqueness is still pushing him up, but the Gall thing is just pulling him way down. It's being that second head just weighs him down on the tier list. He still got a decent place though, so good for him. Okay, next up we got Diablo, and this tank I actually feel is a really good one. So Diablo for me is going in the A tier. Again, struggled a lot with balance problems. The one-shot Diablo build was, in my opinion, not good. Where you could just charge someone against the wall, flip them over, charge them against another wall, and one-shot them, and there was almost nothing they could do. That sucked. I did not like that. What I do like about Diablo, though, I think his soul mechanic, collecting souls from killing things, is really cool. I'm just going to cancel out, by the way, and reset this, and hopefully we can get back into it. If not, no worries, right? But I think Diablo, I think he's really cool. The idea of this dive-heavy tank, he's really good at diving into the fight. He's really aggressive. Goes in, charges people against the wall, slams them against the wall to stun them. He's throwing these fire stomps in. The Apocalypse heroic is really impactful, and so too is Lightning Breath, also very impactful. Both good heroics. They both have a place. I think that's awesome. And a big weakness is that, well, he can charge in, but he certainly can't really charge out very well. And that's a big weakness for the hero. Kind of protected by having a very large health pool. I think that's awesome. I think that's nice. And the whole respawning with souls. Some people don't like that you automatically respawn with 100 souls. For me, I think it's interesting. I think it adds interesting flow to the game when you're playing with Diablo with the souls. Though I do think the change they made recently, where they made the souls give a little bit less max HP, so the souls didn't matter quite as much. Impactful, but not totally defining, and increased his base health to compensate. I think that was a good change. So I think that's good for Diablo. I think the Fire Stomp build is cool. I think a charge build is quite cool as well, so long as it's not too OP. And for those reasons, I think he's a great character. He's got a very clear style of gameplay, aggressive, diving tank that works really well at certain team comps and fails with others. And it gives a good sense of counterplay as well, right? You have to be careful of that dive, but if you can play around that dive carefully and properly, and you respect it, then you can start to punish a tank that has no escape, and you can start to win back. So I think that's really cool. And for me, Diablo, he's one of the best tanks in the game, no question. Arguably, I think, and interestingly enough, the best tank. For me, E.T.C, I think just about for me does squeeze into the S tier of tanks in the game. Just barely, but I am going to put him up there. I think E.T.C is one of the most interesting tanks. As far as tanks go, he's relatively squishy, let's be honest. He relies a lot on his self-healing from his guitar solo, and those short duration bursts of armor that he can get whenever he uses an ability, and you have to play around that a little bit. What makes him interesting, though, I think, number one, you have to respect the two heroics. Two really, really impactful feeling heroics that just really totally changed the entire way the game is played. And I think that's a really awesome thing. Mosh Pit is probably the #1 definitive tanking ultimate in the entire game. It is the... If you ask people to name one of the ults, one of the heroics for a tank in the game, I think most people would instantly go, yeah, Mosh Pit, right? It is such an iconic ability, so powerful an ability, and it changes how your team plays around the map. It changes so much about how the enemy team plays around the map. You have to save abilities like, you know, a Tychus grenade or like an Ana sleep dart. You have to be thinking about those things and saving them to counteract that E.T.C. Because you know if you don't counterplay against it, the E.T.C. could potentially just win the whole game against you. But if you do save your abilities properly and you shut that down from the E.T.C., then you can have a really good impact on the game. And I think that feels really good. And then, again, on the same side, he also has Stage Dive, right? You don't see it pick that often, but what is it? It is a heroic that has a global component. So it opens up the whole idea of split pushing as E.T.C, soaking some extra experience, being able to engage from anywhere on the map. I think that's really cool as well. So you get to choose between these two heroics, one which is probably the most teamfight defining heroic in the entire game. In fact, across all roles, I'm going to come out and say this, I think that Mosh Pit is probably the #1 most defining teamfight heroic in the game across all roles. And then you also get a really powerful, really nice global effect as well, which, you know, if you look at a hero like Falstad, for example, as a ranged assassin, having that global kind of defines almost the entire identity of the hero. It's such a huge part of how he is. E.T.C gets to choose that as an option. How cool is that? It's really cool. So I think that's awesome. I also think he's got interesting things going on with a knockback that comes out from him. The fact that his stun is also like a slide. So yeah, you could slide behind an enemy player, stun them, and then knock them back into your team. But it also leaves you vulnerable too, and I think that's pretty cool. I think that's an interesting gameplay aspect. He also has, I think, a really, really good set of level 20 talents, where all of them feel like they have a really good effect. And it's, you know, one of the heroes in the game that, you know, when we get to level 20, I'm not probably going to be checking like Anub'arak or Blaze. I might take a quick glance to see what they have. In fact, I should take a quick glance to see what every hero has, right? But I'm not gonna be too concerned about it. Whereas with E.T.C, you can absolutely get to level 20, and E.T.C, he might not even pick his level 20 talent because he's waiting. He's gonna wait and choose the one that suits the team fight best. I think that's awesome, and you have to be really aware of that. Maybe he takes Bolt of the Storm and can just bolt in, power slide, Mosh Pit, and bam, you're done, right? You have to be aware he could do that. Maybe he takes Death Metal, where he dies, he does a Mosh Pit. Okay, cool. Now we have to think about when we kill this guy and where we're positioned. Okay, changes how we're going to play the game, but we can play around it. We can play against it. Maybe he takes a Torbus, right, where he can power slide during Mosh Pit. So again, you need to be aware that he can do that. And again, you position properly, you can get around it, but you have to know about it, and you have to change how you play the game. I think that stuff's all really cool. Or he's got the big stage dive. We know he can stage dive multiple times, and we just have to be really scared of that global engagement. I think that's awesome. And the hero just has so much flavor that the second you see E.T.C picked in the game, you're thinking about, okay, how do I change the way I play to counter this? How do I play around it? And if you're on his team, you're thinking, okay, how can I play with the E.T.C? Am I ready to follow up on his engagements? All that sort of stuff. I think that's so cool. And for me, it makes him a really good tank and one of the best designed heroes in the game. Next up, we've got Garrosh, who I think is also a really good tank too. I'm going to put Garrosh in the A tier. I think I could touch on one of the bad things first. I think the bad thing first is that Decimate. His second heroic, you know, Lightning Breath and APOC, they're both good, right? Mosh Pit and Stage Dive, they're both good. Whereas, I can't even think of the name. Warlord's Challenge, right? The Global Taunt? You don't even think about the name because you just always take it. That's really good. Decimate, not so much. It's one of those sort of meme heroics. It's kind of fun to pick sometimes, but it's just not that impactful. So I think that does bring Garrosh down quite a bit. It lowers the flexibility. But what you have, though, at its core, I think the core of Garrosh is really cool. It's really interesting. I love his trait. I think it's one of the most interesting traits in the game. You get increasing armor as your health goes down. It just gives you a really powerful sense of being a strong frontliner, right? It gives you so much confidence in moving forwards and creating that zone, just being this threat in the front line and having that innate tankiness to survive. And it gives some cool counterplay too, right? Where you can be more aggressive on low health. And the enemy team still has to respect that because you've got so much armor that you're harder to kill than you look. So they have to kind of constantly think about that, and it lets you be more aggressive. Whereas other tanks, you get to low health, you kind of have to run away. Garrosh kind of gets stronger as the fight goes on. I think that's really interesting. Also, I think one cool thing about him is that he doesn't have any mobility. Like, Diablo can dive in, E.T.C can stage dive in, or he can power slide in, Anub'arak can burrow in, Blaze can charge in. Arthas, I think it's a downfall for him that he doesn't have any mobility because he's so bad at engaging. But Garrosh, thanks to how tanky he is, he can be that big front line at the front, and he's kind of relying on his trait to keep him alive, and the benefits that his healers get as well from being able to heal someone that has that armor. They get extra value out of their heals on that. But he gets to be that sort of front line at the front. He creates so much threat just because if you do get hit by his abilities and he stuns you and he can throw you backwards, if you start getting hit by that, it has such a huge impact. So even though he's really slow, all he does is walk at you. You still have to respect that so much and play around it. I think that's really cool. I think he's probably just about one of the only tanks really that succeeds. I think when we look at, we've only a few more to go here, but yeah, most other tanks really very strongly rely on mobility to be useful. Or range to be useful, but Garrosh, despite having his taunt be really short range, his throw being literally melee range, despite that, he still manages to have this huge impact. And I think it's just a fun zoning threat that creates, just from how strong the hero is and that armor he has. I think it's it fits the character, makes him badass, doesn't it? I think that's really cool. So for me, he's definitely an A, but the lack of Decimate, that sort of lack of variety in his builds and the way he plays, definitely holds him back, compared to E.T.C. It's like you could have a split pushing stage dive E.T.C. You'd have a knockback team fight mosh pit E.T.C. Very different styles of play. Same thing with Diablo, like a one-shot build or APOC or Fire Stomps and Lightning Breath. Very different types of those heroes. Garrosh it's just Garrosh. He's awesome, but it's just Garrosh. I think that brings him down. Next up, we have Johanna. And Johanna, again, is going to be an A-tier tank for me. I think Johanna just fulfills that feeling of just really being a tanky tank, right? The defensive tank, the shield. I think it's so appropriate. Just like Garrosh, he gives you that feeling of kind of aggression, raw primal aggression. Johanna creates that feeling of just being the shield wall in front of her team. I think that's so cool. The fact that basically all of her abilities have this area of effect, right? She's got the shield bash, which is an area effect slow. She's got her condemn, which is an area effect mini stun and pull in. Then she's got her blind, which is an area of effect conal blind. I think that's really interesting, really unique. That she's not really much of a threat one-on-one, but she's all about playing against the enemy team as a whole. It's all about AoE. It's about being the shield for your whole team against their whole team, all at the same time, being that impenetrable wall at the front that's crowd controlling them and just stopping them. And by them, I really do mean all of them. Like Diablo kind of picks and chooses a target with his charge. It's a little bit single target focused, whereas Johanna, it's all about I'm block all of you. None of you are getting past me. I'm stopping you all, which I think is really awesome. She also got, great wave clear, which is an interesting niche for a tank, though I think probably a little bit overpowered, I say, as someone who was effectively a Johanna main for quite a while. It was a little bit broken, to be fair, but I think just the idea is really cool. Her Iron Skin trait is a really impactful feeling, and again, it opens up some counterplay. I think there's a bit of a problem at the moment, I will say, with the level 1 trait talent being so strong, the Iron Skin one. I actually don't think that's good. That would pull her down a bit, where the shorter cooldown, it kind of limits the amount of counterplay you can have. I think the older version of Johanna, where that trait wasn't as good, that talent wasn't there, was better. Where there was a bigger window to go, okay, Johanna doesn't have her trait. She can't pop that big shield and become unstoppable. So now we can punish her. I think that's a better gameplay mechanic than what they have now, where it's like, okay, she just used her shield. Well, okay, but she's going to have it back in a few seconds, I guess. So it's hard to play against that. So I think that's a downside, which does pull her down a bit. And the other thing that definitely pulls her down, no question about it, is the heroics. Okay, Blessed Shield feels great, and it gives her that engagement potential. And it's a really cool ability, like Avengers Shield, Captain America, throw out the shield and it's bouncing around. It's badass. It's really cool. Falling Sword, it's quite cool. It's quite badass as well. It's just bad, right? It's just not very good in comparison to Blessed Shield. There's really no situation where you would ever really take it, unless you're just kind of having a bit of fun. I think that's definitely a big downside to Johanna. I think it's a big downside to any hero. Having 2 viable heroics is really important, and she doesn't particularly have that. On the flip side, much like E.T.C, she has a very, very cool level 20, right? Very cool level 20, where each ability is extremely impactful and really changes how you play. So you give your teammates a whole bunch of shields. That's really cool. You can get indestructible, so you become even harder to kill yourself. You know, saving yourself with a massive shield when you hit 1 hit point, making your blessed shield throw stun, and that's super strong right now. That was a recent change. They made that talent really good. Obviously, the falling sword upgrade is really good, though you're really never going to see that because you're not going to take it. But yeah, her level 20s are really impactful. I think that's quite fun too. But for me, I think the thing that really makes her feel good, though, is just the fact that you are the shield wall for your team. I think she captures that fantasy really well. But yeah, it's kind of a couple of those things I mentioned, though, that bring her down. Next up, we have Mal'Ganis. For me, Mal'Ganis, he's kind of a B. I think he's a B tier hero. He's got some cool stuff, interesting stuff going on with the sleep mechanic. I think the sleep mechanic is quite cool. I do think it's cool. I think it's fun. Being able to kind of run people down and put them to sleep. Some of the things I don't like about Mal'Ganis, they've kind of struggled with balancing him, and he's kind of flitted between being really bad and feeling okay. I just don't know. He feels he's in a good spot right now. I will say right now, in terms of his gameplay, he could even perhaps push into the A tier, perhaps. But historically, he hasn't been so hot. His heroics, for me, are a little bit hit and miss. I think that the Carrion Swarm is fantastic, and that's kind of the thing you're playing around. Obviously, the counterplay to it is crowd control. You stun him when he wants to go into his Carrion Swarm, and bam, you can kill the Mal'Ganis, okay? But at the same time, though, the other heroic, the Life Leech one, I think is really underwhelming. I just, you know, you have some of those cool moments. It does create cool moments, I'll say that. You know, Anub'arak Locust Swarm, cool moments, not so much. You know, you're not really going, wow, I got these really cool Locust Swarm today, or wow, this Garrosh Decimate was amazing. Not so much. Yeah, the Life Leech heroic that Mal'Ganis has, it does create cool moments. It does. Where you feel like you've had a cool impact and you go, wow, look, his whole life bar is depleting and my life bar is filling up. The problem, though, is that that's a really rare thing to happen. And most of the time, it's not going to have that much of a big effect, or it makes players play really badly and just like int in and lose most of their life for no good reason just to get the cool heroic. I think that's kind of underwhelming in my opinion. I also feel like he's maybe a bit too reliant on some of his talents to make him feel good. You kind of need, like right now, you know, the Winged Guard, you kind of need that to feel tanky. The sleep, you kind of need the extra movement speed to really make that feel impactful. So for me, that does pull back a little bit in terms of Mal'Ganis. But what I do like is that he is a hero. He's unique, and I think that's important. He is unique as a tank. He just does feel perhaps a little bit clunky, a little bit slow. I think there's something good to be said about that. I think he is a B tier hero. It's cool, it's unique, it's different. But I don't like his second heroic much. I feel like his talent choices are a little bit limited. You know, you've got something cool like Blind as a Bat at level 16, where you just lose all vision and you can kind of spam around like crazy, but it's just not very good. So that uniqueness kind of falls by the wayside there. But yeah, I think he's a cool hero with good potential. He just didn't quite push up into that A tier for me, I'm afraid. Next up, we have Muradin. I love Muradin, and for me, Muradin is an S tier. He's an S tier tank, I think, for sure. Muradin, he's kind of like, much like Johanna is kind of a very tanky tank, I feel like Muradin is also that, right? He's also that. It's like, yes, I've got a stun with Stormbolt. Cool. I've got this Thunderclap, which is an AoE slow. Awesome. I can jump in. I can jump out with Dwarf Toss. Great. I can pop Avatar to be really tanky. My trait self-heals me a bunch, so I can tank up a lot of damage and then self-heal. Cool. Or I can go Haymaker for a displacement thing. I think that's kind of neat as well. So I feel like Muradin, he's kind of like the archetype of what a tank is supposed to be. He's kind of like the foundation, the very essence of what makes a tank. And I think that is really cool, really interesting. I will say, I just mentioned Haymaker. That's obviously a bit of a downside. I don't think it's quite enough to pull him down from S tier, though, is that Haymaker is not very good. It's somewhat similar to, you know, the Decimator or Falling Sword level. Not quite as bad as that. And, you know, you got the Haymaker Playmaker. I think for a meme ability, whereas like let's say Falling Swords for Johanna, Falling Sword it's a meme ability, but doesn't really feel that good. It's kind of like, oh, took Falling Sword, that's funny, but meh, it's not really having a big impact on the game. Haymaker definitely does have a big impact on the game. Haymaker, Playmaker, the massive knockback that it has and the big chunk of damage it does, that has an impact. I think that's kind of cool. What I do like about Muradin, though, I do like Muradin's talent tree. I think it's one of the better talent trees in the game. You know, it feels like a very different sort of play style when you're going in one game and maybe you've got a Q build. So your storm bolts are hitting really hard. They're piercing through, destroying siege camps, destroying structures with Sledgehammer at 4. I think that feels really cool. Or then compared to a Muradin that's going in and building Thunderclap. So all about that sort of zoning and slowing down the enemy team. And maybe he's got healing static at 13 and healing with that. Versus having a Muradin that's more focused on his basic attacks and basic attack damage. I think that's kind of unique and kind of interesting, and I do like that about him. But yeah, for me, the fundamental thing about Muradin though is just the base kit. He kind of has it all, right? He's got the stun, he's got the AOE effects, the slows, he's got the mobility with Dwarf Toss, he's got the self healing, he's got the bonus health, he's got the knockback with Haymaker. He's got it all. He's got a little bit of everything. I think that's pretty cool. And he kind of has to be the S tier tank, I think, for that reason. He's also, basically for the entire history of the game, Muradin has always been, because of that, just being the archetype of a tank. He's always been basically a decent to solid to very good pick in nearly every single game and every single team comp against every single enemy team comp. Muradin's always like, he's always good. He's always good. He's always a great pick. He's always been relevant. And that makes him S tier for me. Okay, we're gonna end with a couple of tanks here. You guys can see it coming. And we're gonna get a bit harsh here. We're gonna get a bit mean. Stitches for me is a D. He's a D tier tank. Stitches is our first member of the D tier. Sorry to Stitches fans, but it's true. My issue with Stitches, I feel like Stitches is one big fat gimmick, right? Stitches, he's two gimmicks. He's about the hook, pulling people out of position. And he's got the gorge as well, gorging them and walking them under a tower, or just basically just walking them under a tower. Really, that's most of it. That's most of gorge. That's kind of all Stitches is. And he's just a big honking chunk of HP pool walking around. Yeah, he does his slam and he does his bite thing, but for me, they're very, very underwhelming, very unimpactful. And that's what I don't like about Stitches. He feels like a really all or nothing hero. He's all about, okay, can you hook someone and pull them out of position? Then we just kill them? Yeah? Okay, cool. Well, then you just had a great impact. Did you miss or did they dodge it or whatever? Okay, then he feels kind of useless. And I don't like that. I also think he feels kind of bad to play against. He feels bad to play against because, again, I remember specifically like the older Stitches, which had the longer hook range by default. Again, very much, it's kind of frustrating just being hooked over a wall. Feels great for the Stitches. He feels amazing. But for you playing against that, it's like, okay, I got hit by a hook. There's really nothing I can do here. For a lot of heroes, you're just dead. You got hooked out of line of sight, you're just dead. And that kind of sucks. And I feel like late game Stitches as well, with the extra hook range at 16, again, it just becomes a thing of being like, well, hero kind of sucks. He kind of just doesn't really do much, but the hook. So we land one hook. We kill one person, just pick him off, and there's nothing that the enemy team can do if that hook lands. Nothing they can do, no counterplay really. Well, we killed them, cool. Maybe we win the game now because we just got that kill. Or we don't hit anybody with a hook, and, well, we're kind of screwed. Yeah, I don't like it. I feel like he's bad. And like I said, I think the Gorge thing as well, it's like hook into Gorge, and you just gorge them. I think Gorge, there could have been a cool idea there if you're gorging someone mid-team fight. You know, like a nano-boosted target. Ooh, I'll gorge them and kind of take them out of the fight for a while. There could have been some interesting gameplay around that of removing a hero from the fight for a few seconds. Turns out that that's actually not that impactful at all. Like, it's okay, but it's not a big deal by any means in terms of how Heroes of the Storm is played. Might be a bigger deal in other MOBAs with faster team fights. And in HOTS, not so much, actually. And Gorge really mostly comes down to just, well, it's just about dropping people behind towers. And aside from that, it doesn't do too much. The Bile Heroic, I think, is pretty cool. It's not bad. It's actually quite viable, but it's also not that impactful. So yeah, that's what I don't like about Stitches. I feel like it's about this. It's all about this gimmick, or these two gimmicks, which have relatively unfun counterplay. I will say he's not an F tier hero. An F tier is really bad, right? He's a D tier hero. I don't think he's great, but it's okay that he's in the game. I guess I'm kind of glad that there is that hook gimmick in the game, right? I think it's nice that it's there, I guess, because it's sort of interesting. You'd be a little bit sad if it wasn't there. But then you're probably also glad that Stitches isn't that good because it's kind of a bit annoying to play against. So, yeah, for me, Stitches, he's kind of a D-tier hero. Feels fun to land a good hook as Stitches, but it probably doesn't feel very good to play with him on your team apart from that. And it probably doesn't feel very good to play against him apart from that either. So pretty meh from me. Then finally, we've got Tyrael. Again, another D-tier hero. I'm going to be honest, I could almost put Tyrael in the F tier. I will say that historically, Tyrael used to be pretty good. Tyrael used to have an interesting niche in the game as the tank that kind of dove in with his team and, you know, spread the shield, spread the sanctification. I'm thinking way back when. I remember when I first started getting into Heroes of the Storm, watching the Korean play. I think it was called OGN at the time. I think it was OGN. You guys can let me know if you remember. It was like Arthas and Wolf used to cast that, and the Koreans used to play lots of Tyrael, and they used to play like these aggressive Illidan or Greymane plays, going in with the Tyrael, diving in. He'd be like the dive buddy tank. I think that used to be pretty cool. He had a good spot. I think as the game has evolved, though, they've added more heroes and they've changed some of the gameplay mechanics. Tyrael has really fallen off to a point where just what does the hero really bring these days? It's hard to say. He's always been crippled with high mana cost. It feels just bad to play him. You feel like you're always running out of mana, despite not really doing very much. Also, compared to most of the other main tanks, you can actually see that if you look right here, you can almost draw a line in terms of the amount of crowd control that these tanks provide. And it's almost like lots of crowd control, still good crowd control here in B, and then you get into C, the crowd control falls off, you get into D, and the crowd control falls off even more. I feel like that's a big part of what makes a main tank, and Tyrael, and much like Stitches, really lacks anything like that. The only way to get a stun for Tyrael is with Judgment, the heroic, which is, let's be honest, very underwhelming these days. His trait feels very underwhelming too. You have to die, then you can become a kind of a suicide bomber. Again, like so many heroes have dashes and mobility nowadays that you don't really do much with the trait. He's just a very, very dated hero. I think if they were to design Tyrael now from scratch, like if Tyrael was a new hero being added into the game, he would be nothing like this Tyrael. In fact, I'm almost tempted to put him into F tier. Will I do it? We just like to have one in each. You know what? Screw it. We will put him into F tier. I think Tyrael for me is an F. Because, being relevant for the first year or so of the game is nice, but then being kind of useless after that is bad. I also did not like his rework. He had, they had this idea of adding all these basic attack talents and it being cool, right? Like you can basic attack heroes to stack up health regen on yourself, and you can smite to improve your basic attack damage. It's rubbish, though. It does nothing. It just feels bad. It just doesn't feel good. The basic attack build Tyrael, basic attack Muradin, that feels good. That feels impactful. You feel like you're hitting dudes with that hammer and give them the axe. You feel like you're doing some damage. You feel like you're making an impact. Tyrael, basic attack Tyrael? Nah, you don't feel like that at all. One big problem as well, I think, with the character, like if we look at some of the newer heroes, like Blaze has got really interesting synergies between his abilities, or Mal'Ganis does as well, right? So like Blaze, you can throw out the oil, slow them down, bam, charge in, stun them now that they're slowed down, and now you're at a position with your charge, light that oil on fire, hit them with your 2 flame jets, you're standing in the fire, you're healing, they're taking more damage. You got some cool interplay with his abilities. Tyrael, it's like, okay, you've got smite, that's sort of this damagey thing in front of you. Okay, you've got a shield that shields your allies. Okay, they don't really go together. You can throw out your sword and teleport to it. So you could like, I don't know, I guess spend a bunch of mana to like teleport back and give your teammates a shield, or you could teleport in and kind of smite the enemy team for almost no damage. And yeah, I don't know. You could die and then they could run away and your death explosion would do nothing. It just doesn't really, none of it really it feels very good. None of it feels very impactful. It doesn't really synergize together. It's just not interesting. For me, that makes Tyrael feel pretty bad. I think one cool thing he does have, like some of his level 7 talents, I think are, he's got some cool talents, like the one that makes his shield explode when it breaks or when it expires. That one's pretty fun, but it's, it's an option. It's not part of his base kit. Or a Swift Retribution, where your smite actually gives a meaningful burst of movement speed and attack speed. I think that's pretty cool, but it's a talent which competes against other talents on the same tier. Or like Holy Ground again. Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like he was great when he first came out. He's pretty cool, pretty interesting. And then he just became irrelevant, and the rework really didn't succeed in making him feel relevant either. And there you go, guys. That is the tanking tier list. As you can see, it's quite a top-heavy tier list here. Most things are B, A, or S, and I think those are quite good. And I think C is kind of average. Like, C is like, they're all right. It's fine. We only have two tanks, which I feel go in the lower tiers here. So on the whole, I think that tanks in Heroes of the Storm, they're pretty well designed, actually. I think they're generally quite good. You've got a lot of unique and interesting identities to the kits. You know, yeah, we got quite a few struggles in terms of making some of the different heroics feel relevant. That's definitely been a little bit of a problem across some of the different tanks. But generally speaking, you know, there's very few tanks where you go, it's just another Muradin, or it's just another X, Y, or Z. They all kind of have their own unique identity, and I think that's really cool. And like I said, most of them are quite good. They've got interesting ways to play with them. They've got interesting ways to play against them. A few of them at the top have a little bit of talent variety, which is cool. Or kind of like Garrosh or Johanna, they just have a very interesting core identity that makes them just fun to play with or against. And we only have a couple, I think, which have really struggled to find a particular niche and feel underwhelming. So there you go, guys. That's my look at the tanks in Heroes of the Storm. I can imagine that we got quite a few different opinions here, so let me know what you think. Have I radically misplaced somebody in your opinion? What would you change? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know. And let me know if you liked the video. Sorry that the game crashed and we lost the music. I'll fix that if we do another one. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. This is what I think of tanks and HOTS. Bye-bye.